One of the most obvious things you'll notice in this 2025 year slate of games coming out this upcoming year that China is trying to make a big splash and impact in the gaming environment. And they're doing it already with hit titles like Marvel Rivals that have come out and just conquered the video gaming space. And they have more titles coming out this year that are set to do what Black Myth Wukong did last year. And I think that is just what we're seeing in the gaming environment nowadays, where China is trying to establish its name, and they're doing that by doing all the right things that Western games development has done in the past 20 to 30 years. And that's why gamers are hyped about their products, and that just shows the historic background behind Western game devs, that Chinese developers are following in our footsteps and making great games by doing that. And that is the confusing thing to a lot of Eastern game developers right now, specifically China, where they're trying to learn from the current day market in the West, and they're going to classes in Western games development environments in California, and one in particular, Sweden, where they're trying to learn the current day video game development process to see how they can improve. And what they're seeing is not the stylistic dedication that they see in their Eastern peers like Japan or Korea. They're seeing the opposite of that. They're seeing the political progressive activism that we see from California spread and poison the entire gaming market. What I'm talking about here is a Swedish game design class that a Chinese programmer from some of these development companies in China went there and wanted to learn the Western design way of how do you produce video games in the proper way. And what he got was just a teaching of political correctness and progressive liberal philosophy, nothing to do with actual game design. And I think that is the absurd thing that we're seeing right now, where a Chinese dev comes into the classroom and they're talking about transgenderism. They're talking about the typical modern day political philosophies that you usually see espoused in the classroom. They're talking about how Laura Croft is a man with breasts, how this is a representation of non-binariness, which makes absolutely no sense if you're a gamer, but it seems like these classes are not being taught by gamers. They're being taught by political activists. You can just look at the woman that's cheating right now. She looks like she's never played a game in her life, and she's talking about how Final Fantasy VII's Cloud Strife is a perfect representation of trans identity. When you actually play the game, you know Cloud Strife hates that dress and he's trying to get out of it, and he's just frustrated the whole time. But that doesn't matter to the person that's not playing video games. And this is kind of what astonished the game designers from China, where they're thinking, okay, the game designers in the Western world have absolutely no idea what they're trying to develop anymore. They're talking about doing things in kind with their personal ideology when it comes to politics, rather than what is in favor of the customer that you're trying to sell a product to. You're trying to produce something where you actually have a gamer attached to your product. And you have some of the translations of the things that you see here about them talking about how fighting game characters should be neither male or female. They should adopt some non-binary pronouns and positioning, and how they should move in such a way where they don't distinctly show their personal gender, which is kind of just out of whack with actually having something gamers actually want to look at and enjoy and see, kind of a superimposed hyper representation of reality in a gaming format. That's what gamers are going to play games for, just to escape and to be in a hyper realized fantasy where they can just have fun. And I think this is the thing that's lost in the people that are running these classes in Western games development design, where they're talking about queer theory, they're talking about radical feminism in the production of games. These things have just no basis in actual good game design. And that's kind of just showing the product of the Western games development sphere in the classes, where it's deeply rooted at the teaching level, where we're teaching people the false things that you don't need to actually produce an actually quality game. And then, and even more so, they go deep in the weeds of the controversies in 2014 when it comes down to video games and their development, and how gamers rejected reviews from compromised reviewers who were having intimate relationships with female developers, and they turned that into a radical protest message within their discussion. And it just shows the rot in gaming is at its core, it's at the teaching process. And it goes even beyond that. Some of the teachers for these classes, they're the ones putting out articles about these stupid messagings that are in video games that are not just really even there. They're just trying to frame a narrative where it's perverting even the smallest concepts and ideas in a game to fit in line with their political activism. And this is the type of thing that frustrates gamers, where we're just having topics and discussions not about actually making quality games. It's about the impact of personal philosophies, how to mitigate and change the entire video gaming industry to fit with your idealism, even when you don't really care about making games at all. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing here. We're seeing dispassionate people that don't care about video games and are just there to actually populate them with their personal philosophies and idealism, or what they believe the world has to be. And it's just kind of funny to see a Chinese student go in there and go, what the heck is this about? This is not teaching me anything that I need to do to actually make a proper good game. And I think that is the thing that we're hearing from Chinese developers that are going to these classes. They find them absolutely useless to their actual fundamental goal of producing content that gamers actually want to play. And it just looks like a class that has no gamers in it at all. It looks like people that are just in there for activism purposes only, and they don't care about the outcome of the games that they're going to be involved with. And it just kind of gets scary when you know what's happening in other countries like China, where they're doubling and tripling their investments in the gaming industry because they see a giant open gap that needs to be filled, where customers are not being serviced anymore, where they're being inundated with these political activism messages and they're not getting the games they actually want to see. And that's why Phantom Blade Zero, a game that's coming out that had little funding, is getting triple the funding right now after Black Myth Wukong's massive success. And you can see Chinese game developers following an upscale production design, where they're having kind of a vertical integration of how they produce these games in such a quick, fast-paced method that even Japanese developers are having a tough time keeping up with. And it seems like a lot of Western game developers are not even prepared to make one game in 4 years. And these developers here are making a game within a year or two, and they're upscaling with AI technology to make that process even quicker. And I think it just shows that the gaming industry is shifting, and the Western game developers just don't know where they are right now. They're not even producing games for gamers anymore, and they don't even know how to use the technology of the future that is going to wipe out the people that don't keep up with the times. And I think China is on that way, where they're going to capture the entirety of the video gaming industry, especially when we have developers making games focused on character designs, game designs that are not interesting to the gamers. You could just look at the games that came out this past two years or so. You have Final Fantasy characters that are absolutely annoying. You have Dragon Age Veilguard that just brought in its own personal gender ideology to be the focus of a fantasy world that had no concept of it before this game was released. You saw what happened with Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2, where they just swapped her face out to be a representation of a person on the writing staff. It had nothing to do with the quality of the game, and of course the politics and gender racial issues they stuffed into that. Concord, the biggest failure in the gaming industry, that just didn't even make a good game design that gamer could even look at for 5 minutes. You see what's happening with Kingdom Come 2, which was once a staunch believer in historical facts right now. Of course, the ill-fated Forspoken, which was just a game that was incompetently made with a terrible story. And I think this just goes back to the quality drop that we're seeing in the gaming industry. While Western game developers are fiddling around trying to form their politics in the games they're producing, Chinese developers are just making games. They're trying to learn how to make the best games as fast as possible. And that's why we're seeing this uptick in high quality games coming out from China, where they are only focused on making quality. And we're seeing that quality be produced, pushed out, and actually be successful on the market. And that's why the future of gaming is going towards the Eastern game developers. It's not only China, it's going to Japan, Korea, and even Russia as well, where Russia has increased their overall funding for gaming as well, because they see it as a point of influence within society. And I think this is the clear thing that we're seeing right now, that gaming is something that's powerful and should be used as a mode of influence. And we're seeing the Western game developers, consultancy firms, and investment bank knowing this, but doing it in such an improper way where they're losing the market share. And it's kind of sad to see that happen. But that is just the evolution of gaming. But you tell me what you think about the situation. I'd like to hear your thoughts, comments, like, comment, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.